And I can just, I think we're in a good spot.
Okay, let's see. I see Rashawn still as an attendee.
Yeah, I tried to promote him to panelist, but I think he declined it. I'll try one more time and. Rashawn, if you can hear me. Accept the panelist request, please. Okay. 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. Okay, good. There he is. Okay, perfect. All right.
There we
Oh,
are.
there's Deborah.
All right, we have a quorum present, and all right, I'll proceed to call the meeting to order here. And we'll begin with a roll call of the members. John Allen,
Present.
Julie Capizzello, yeah, Julie Capizzello. I see Julie on the Zoom, but I didn't hear.
Yes. See her.
No, she just chatted that she's here, so I'll take that as
Perfect.
a response to the roll call. Bob Carroll,
Hi, Bob's here.
Doreen DeFazio, don't see her here. Victoria Duckworth,
Present.
Susan Duvall, don't see Susan. Lindsay Fox,
Present.
Anne Marie Foley, I don't see Anne Marie here. Deborah George,
Here.
Julie Grace,
Here.
Linda Hassinger,
Here.
Justin Hollander, I don't see him on. Brian Hool,
Yes,
He was here.
George.
Uh,
He's there. I see him, but oh, he's there. He just chatted.
just, all righty. Chantel Kimball, Essex Petrie,
Here.
David Robbins is here, Sue Robbins,
Here.
JT Ross, Colleen Roy,
Here.
Roshana Tangi.
Here.
Very good. I have 14 members acknowledged being present, which constitutes a quorum. So let me find my agenda here. Where did I put the agenda? There it is. So let's begin with some action items. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes that need to be approved. First is from December 4th. Any comments on the December 4th minutes? I had just one note. The minutes seemed to record, well, the minutes seemed to say that at the end that we voted to adjourn, but since we didn't have a quorum, we couldn't actually vote.
Okay, I'll just make a note.
But that's the only thing I saw in the minutes that struck me as needing correction. Anybody else have anything?
No.
If there's nothing else, any motion to approve well, since we have to do a roll call, let's look at the other minutes here. Just the February minutes of the February meeting. I didn't see anything in the February minutes that I thought needed to be changed or corrected. So with that, the chair would recognize a motion to approve the minutes of December 4th, 2023 and February 5th, 2024 as drafted with the corrections noted during discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Did I hear somebody start to say something? All right, with no discussion on the motion, we'll vote by roll call. John Allen,
Approve.
Julie Capizello,
Approve.
Bob Carroll,
I approve.
Victoria Duckworth,
Aye.
Lindsay Fox,
Approve.
Julie Grace, no. Yeah, Deborah George. Lost my
Approve.
place. Julie Grace,
Aye.
Linda Hassinger,
Aye.
Brian Hull,
Aye.
Essex Petrie,
Aye.
David Robbins votes aye. Sue Robbins,
Aye.
Colleen Roy,
Aye.
and Roshana Tangi.
Approve.
All right, motion carried unanimously. The minutes are approved. Next on the action item list was to appoint JT Ross as an associate member. Fiona?
Yeah, sure. So JT relayed to me that he's having some difficulties being able to meet the monthly meetings because he's traveling a lot for work and he's involved in some other things. So I suggested, which I mentioned at a prior meeting, I want to say the last meeting perhaps, that an option for him would be an associate member position so that he can step in if we need a vote, and he can still, be on the group and participate, because he really didn't want to, he still wanted to stay involved, but trying to be cognizant of the quorum issues. So I put this on the, I asked him what he thought, and he said that's fine. And I, want to make sure that the group does a formal vote and approves it and is in agreement before we move forward. So he's aware that we were taking this up this evening, and he couldn't make it again. So, but I'll let him know what we ultimately decide.
Okay, so the idea would be to remove him as a regular committee member and designate him as an associate member, for which as best as I can recall, the associate member status basically is participate in the discussions, but not count towards a quorum.
Right.
So any thoughts, any suggestions, any motions?
I make a motion that we put JT as associate and remove him as a member.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And any discussion on the motion? That reduces our formal membership to 19, which actually steps our quorum requirement down to 10.
Yeah.
All right, with no further discussion, let me find I keep losing my roll call on my screen here. All right, Mr. Allen,
Approve.
Ms. Capizello,
Approved.
Mr. Carroll,
Carol's aye.
Ms. Duckworth,
Aye.
Ms. Fox,
Approve.
Ms. George,
Approve.
Ms. Grace,
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Hool,
Aye.
Mr. Petrie,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Ms. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Roy,
Aye.
and Mr. Utangi.
Approve.
Excellent. Motion carried unanimously. Moving on then, our next order of business on the as an action item, we had approval of the findings, goals, and objectives for the housing and economic development chapters. I guess, let's see. Elena had written up a draft of that. It's actually in a document that includes economic development goals and objectives and some action items, housing draft goals, objectives and some action items. The document goes on to, introduce the quality of life section, which is another one of our agenda items. You want to take a look right now at the economic development and housing goals and objectives and see if what we want to do with those and as action items, and then we'll take the rest of it up a little later.
That works for me, Dave, and Sarah and Elena, if that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we plan to cover economic development and housing, but we also included quality of life. We didn't get a chance to present the findings for quality of life at our last session, but we plan to include it in this session. But we will also revisit quality of life in our next session, if that makes sense. So we're shooting for covering all three topics today, but primarily economic development and housing to get that to the point where it can be adopted by the working group. And we'll
Yeah,
take what
that's my recollection that we would, we want to try to at least more or less nail down housing economic development. I mean, everything's subject to further revision as we go along, but yeah, we were gonna try to nail down housing economic development and begin work on quality of life.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, Dave. And I should begin by thanking you for your wonderful feedback. It was very, very useful to receive ideas and written goals and suggestions and analysis from all of you. So it was enormously helpful in putting these goals together. So thank you so much for that. I also wanted to outline the next two sessions. So April and May will be covering goals for the other elements of the master plan. So in April, we plan to cover land use, government services, and transportation. And we'll send the working group some findings ahead of time and some draft goals so that we can receive feedback from you. And we will workshop those at the next session. And then at the last session, we'll have natural and cultural resources and open space. So we'll have the same sort of working system in place. And this is so that we cover these in two sessions so that we're able to move on to the draft chapters in the sessions that follow after May. So it's a tight schedule. It will require a little bit of homework, but I think this demonstrated that it's actually very productive to get written feedback from you by email. So I think this works very well. So we can start with economic development. We'll have time today to cover, to spend about 20 minutes per topic. So again, it's a tight schedule, but hopefully we can stay on topic and cover all this material. Economic development, we try to incorporate most of your feedback and also feedback from the two workshops and the survey. And we largely focused on three major topics, so three high-level topics. The first one would be large-scale investments, which has been the focus of the Economic Development Commission for several years. So this first goal that covers large-scale investments sort of, builds on that work and charts the path forward for the next 20 years, continuing that type of work. We also wanted to focus on small scale economic activity, that is to say small businesses. And the third topic has more to do with quality of life. So a lot of the feedback we received at our workshops and in the survey is it underscored this need for quality of life to be part of economic development. That is to say, residents noted the need for amenities, the need for access to natural resources, the need for improvements for walkability, and these are intertwined with economic development. So the third goal is largely focused on that. And I'll go back to the top to start with goal 1. So as I said, goal 1 is, and I'll read them. And if you have any corrections for language or terms that we should include or things that we didn't cover, please, you can always interrupt and let me know. Goal 1, continue to work toward a long-range economic development strategy that charts a strategic direction for development, leveraging Grafton's unique advantages, and makes it more competitive regionally. And the reason for, again, the reason for doing this is that there is some momentum with the North Grafton Science Park. There is a critical mass for building resources for the life science industry. And there is also this relationship with Tufts that the town has been leveraging and obviously should continue to leverage in order to attract these types of investments. So you'll see the first objective is focused on, again, building on the EDC's work to pursue transformative large-scale investments. And the action items, the first action item is focused on building an innovation hub, which has been at the center of the town's efforts. Identify or continue to identify potential development sites, and improving infrastructure to these sites to make them investment ready, so to speak, and to attract the type of investors and businesses that need high quality infrastructure. We recently had a conversation with a developer and we asked him what attracted you to investing in Grafton, and infrastructure was one of the big reasons. In particular, electricity that was provided to a level that can power life science facilities. And then another action item, and please, if you have suggestions for how to craft this, let me know, but it's trying to capture this need for industrial zone land, and I don't want to call it a conflict, but there is a competition with housing, obviously, between land available for commercial, for industrial, and land available for housing. Now, this is largely an effect of the market, so the town can intervene only to a certain extent in what the property owners do with their land. But there are some levers such as zoning that the town can pull. So action item under goal 1, the last action item is trying to get at that tension between housing and commercial.
Elena, I'll just make a quick comment that wow, I think that you nailed it. I mean, this is fantastic. I mean, especially leaning on the zoning. I mean, I know that, I'm not trying to insert my opinion too much, but I definitely want to just reiterate, I like the nod to the EDC as well and having them play a larger role going forward. I love the discussion about life sciences, innovation hubs. That's really kind of what a good chunk of North Grafton really could be utilized toward, especially Discovery Drive, as I'm sure folks on this call are well aware. And just, my final comment again, I mean, we have to really try and, especially, with the tools available to us at the town level. I mean, the zoning bylaw is a very strong tool, so I'm glad that this was included. And, this will obviously overlap with the land use chapter and with the housing chapter, as you just mentioned. So well done. Just comment, right? Looks good.
Yeah, and we had a conversation with GFI Partners recently, and I do have to reiterate, they were very happy with how the town basically courted them to come to Grafton, and all of that effort seemed to have paid off. And also, again, the infrastructure part was all the capital improvements that were done prior to them selecting the site were extremely important. So that was eye-opening, that conversation.
Yeah, they were a great partner to work with, really like receptive, kind of everything that, you'd want in a public-private like partnership like that. They were great to work with. So I'm glad you were able to talk to them. So
Yeah.
perfect.
Sorry, can I just ask one question? I apologize, but there seems to be a strong focus specifically to life sciences R&D. Is that intentional, or are we concerned that we are maybe, really kind of pigeonholing ourselves with goal number 1 already?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a good point. Again, it's going back to that focus, and please, I'm inviting feedback on this, but one of Grafton's advantages, its proximity to life sciences. This is what makes it compete with the likes of Charlton that are focused on manufacturing type of facilities and development. Now, Grafton could take that route as well and focus on warehousing, for example. Again, heavy on manufacturing, but there's a sense, and this also includes feedback from GFI partners, that the type of development that Grafton is very competitive in is life science. And if there is manufacturing, it's pharmaceutical type of manufacturing. Again, this ultimately it's a market question.
Yes.
And I totally agree with that. And that's my only point, is that just being careful that we're catering to a market that is very effective right now for Grafton, but without necessarily boxing us out of that if that no longer becomes an option for Grafton.
Yeah, I think
for whatever reason.
In the long run, we don't want to be too narrowly focused. We've had our eyes on life sciences by whatever name for the better part of 40 years. And I mean, this goes way back in our to not long after Tufts established itself here, that we saw some opportunities there. And at one time, late 80s, early 90s, there was a big biotech boom. We hoped to cash in on that. It never really happened for a lot of reasons. But yeah, we've had our eyes in that general area for decades. And there's still reason to believe that there are opportunities there. But we're also seeing now with what GFI is doing and what other major projects are either have been approved or are coming down the pike. Warehousing and light industrial is also an opportunity. So yeah, over the years, like I said, we kind of had a focus on life sciences, but we didn't, we never really limited it to that. We're always open to other opportunities. The GFI, the parcel the GFI just recently got approval to develop. We've had our eyes on that for a number of years for various possible purposes. At one point, pharmaceutical R&D and even light manufacturing was being looked at there. But yeah, just to reemphasize the point that while life sciences is still viewed as an opportunity of particular interest to us, we do want to have a broader vision than that.
Yeah, thank you both for that point. Do you think we should include language specifically that sort of opens up this goal to light manufacturing as well? So as it reads right now, is it too focused? Sorry.
May I interject? And just for people that may not know, the area is actually zoned to cover light manufacturing, offices, biomanufacturing, life sciences. So it's already properly zoned. So
Yep.
we do have the flexibility based on what people proposed. We can add those additional things, but we don't have the money to focus on everything. So what we're trying to do is allocate it in a way in which the state is growing. The state invests billions of dollars in life sciences. So we're just simply following their lead.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your point.
That makes sense to me, and thanks. I appreciate that. I didn't mean to derail us on goal number one. I apologize, but I appreciate the fact that we are still gonna push for flexibility, and that was really kind of the where I was going at with my point. So thank you.
Fiona?
Yeah, and sorry, I won't commandeer the conversation too much. I know I'm trying to take a back seat, but I just wanted to, just thank ESSEC for that point. We don't want to pigeonhole ourselves, of course, but and just to answer Elena's earlier question about light industrial, light manufacturing, I mean, absolutely. The zoning as it is allows for, with that campus development overlay, which is a good chunk of North Grafton, and there's a lot of flexibility there that we can capitalize on. That's it is got a life sciences and kind of like lab type of use focus, but I mean there's flexibility there, and I think the town could explore even more flexibility and really kind of lean into some of the manufacturing and warehousing, et cetera, uses that are just taking off in this part of the state. So that's just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next objective. We're still under goal 1, but this has to do with small scale economic activity and small businesses. So some of the feedback we got from members of the working group, as well as workshop participants, had to do with retaining existing businesses and some of the efforts that have been made to retain them and needs that remain. So we thought we would include that in a possible long-term economic development strategy. So business retention and also encouraging small businesses. And part of the rationale here is there's a need to keep, so that demand for goods and services, there's some opportunity there to capture for the town, so that people don't go shopping elsewhere for groceries, for don't go to restaurants in other towns. So not only meeting that demand within town boundaries, but maybe even attracting some of the demand from the neighboring towns. So encouraging a vibrant small business and commercial sector would be part of that. So one of the actions.
Let me just throw in one thought here.
Go ahead.
Let me ask a question, first and foremost question. We're not necessarily trying to nail down all the action items here. We've got some suggested action items here, but I'm thinking that there may be more action items that would contribute to some of these goals and objectives. I know when I was thinking about, for the input I provided for the housing goals and objectives, I didn't try to come up with all the action items I thought would be appropriate. I think it's, nailing down as well as we can goals and objectives is that's something we really do want to kind of get that nailed down. But given that, now we can probably all think of some additional action items that will ultimately contribute. So I'm assuming we're not looking at tonight for a complete set of action items.
That is correct. Thanks for that point, David. When we develop the chapters, when we write the chapters, typically action items tend to evolve and change. So we do need that flexibility. But that being said, as many suggestions as you can make, it would be very beneficial. So with the understanding that when we actually get to writing, these may change. That's why we're focusing mostly on goals and objectives, but action items are a subset of that today. So part of objective 2, conduct a community-led retail needs assessment. And then moving on to the third objective under the economic development strategy is, this comes out of our conversations with farm owners. I'm sorry, Colleen, I just saw you have your hand up.
Yeah, just two questions. One is, does it matter the order of the goals? That's more, I'm applying more specifically to the next topic, like having affordability being the number 1 goal versus the number 3 goal, or does it not matter? And then on the goal you're on right now, the number 3 goal for economic development, the reduced disparities, I kind of hate the wording that. Is there a way we can do like increase variation versus reduce disparity? Just because words matter sometimes.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. If disparity is too strong of a word, we can we can get to that with we can craft that in a different direction. And you know, the order of the goals doesn't really matter. This is more a question of formatting than anything else. So the third objective under goal 1, again, this comes out of our conversations with farm owners. From what we understand, farm owners are pivoting to ecotourism strategies. And they do need support with that. They need promotion. And, you know, it's a way to conserve farmland and farming traditions as well, and also a way to capitalize on these resources in town. So we wanted to include that in an economic development strategy and potentially assign that responsibility to the Grafton Agricultural Commission, since it sort of falls under their purview. Roshani, I wanted to make sure we get you have your hand up, wanted to make sure we hear your question.
Yeah, no, basically continuing on the discussion that we're having, right? So while we are calling out few areas specifically, you also talked about restaurants and entertainment centers and things like that. Are there any areas that we'll be calling them out specifically? Because that seems to be a need as well in this town to retain that within the boundaries.
Yeah, so those could fall under different categories. We placed it under objective 3, goal 1.
Okay.
We called it hospitality industry establishments, so that would include restaurants. But we can add some language to make that more specific, since it's an important concern.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, moving on to goal 2. This has to do with diversifying the tax base. This is a point that several of you made in the materials you sent to us. So goal 2 is retain and attract businesses that contribute to diversifying Grafton's tax base and increasing employment opportunities. And part of that is, this is, of course, the work that the Economic Development Commission has been doing. And the point of this is to continue that kind of work and build on it to build town capacity to recruit new businesses. So this is both a question of how to do it, and also, does the town have the capacity to do it, and how do we build on that capacity? Fiona, go ahead.
Yeah, just you know, I feel like this is like kind of your quintessential like goal that you kind of need to have in your master plan process, right? But I just definitely want to make a point about the objective, just from a staff level. You know, we could probably open this up to more. But I mean, I think that it's important that we leverage the Economic Development Commission, but you know, I'm just thinking like larger, can even more than going even more, working, you know, any kind of relevant like groups, chambers, business owners, business liaisons, you know, that kind of thing. I think that this is a good thing to work towards, and we can work with a lot of different stakeholders on it.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. So we try to capture some of that in the first action item. But maybe we should name some of the chambers of commerce, for example. Or maybe create a business association in Grafton that could take on some of that work, some of that marketing and promotional work. We know in towns like Leicester, the business association is very actively promoting current businesses on social media.
Mhm.
And Grafton has been doing some of that as well. There's a directory.
Yeah.
Is it paired with social media, or to what extent is it paired to social media? Could it expand its reach by adding social media to those efforts? So to your point, Fiona, yes, that would be really useful to have both chambers of commerce and local organizations.
Okay, perfect. And Elaine, actually just had one question. And so is that organization that you're referencing in Leicester, is that like a bid? Or is that just a business association of owners who came together? Or is it like a business improvement district that they like established through legal
it's
means, or?
not a business improvement district. It's just a business association where business owners came together. And they have regular meetings, very active on social media, and they work with the Economic Development Committee. So it's in fact, there are members on both.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
And again, you know, social media, whether we like it or not, it's really effective in reaching, especially since they're active in groups, in Facebook groups. It's very effective.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, any sort of like nod to like marketing assistance and like, yeah, social media promotion, those types of tools. I mean, that's always a huge help. I know Facebook has a huge reach in town. I'm not as familiar with, you know, if Twitter or those types of platforms do, but I know Facebook does. And we, at least from planning's perspective, we're always trying to post, but it's, you know, it's hard staying on top of it sometimes. So that's a
Yeah.
good point.
And you know, this again comes out of our conversations with business owners at the January meeting with the EDC's business owners meeting. So several people suggested that we could expand marketing efforts in that way. The last action item refers to TIFs. Several of you suggested that, we've also included startup grants. Startup grants came up during our meetings with business owners. They were looking at Shrewsbury. Apparently Shrewsbury have a sort of relocation incentive or startup grant for businesses, especially hospitality businesses that need to make some tenant improvements when they move into new spaces. It's not a huge grant. I believe it was $10,000, but Lowell uses this very effectively as well. So any sort of improvements that the town could make, I think it would be helpful. Lowell, I believe Lowell calls them relocation grants. So they're very explicit in why these are effective in attracting new businesses. Okay. We'll move on to goal 3 unless there are any questions or comments.
Elena, so those relocation grants, I'm sorry, I keep going. I keep asking questions, but so is it like, do you know off the top of your head if that's something like, because like Lowell, for example, that's a really competitive city, right? You know, when they're going after grants, like they'll typically get them. And like for, you know, coming, you know, Grafton trying to compete against like a Lowell or like a Fitchburg or a Springfield or pick your, you know, gateway city. Do you think that that's something that we could do, like those startup grants? I mean, just thinking, you know, we'd apply if we knew we had a shot for sure.
That's a good question. I would look at Shrewsbury to see how they structure the funding for that, because obviously Grafton is not a gateway city, so it doesn't benefit from from the same mass development type of funding support.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Any other questions on goal 2? Okay, we'll move on to goal 3. Reduce disparities between areas of North and South Grafton by building amenities and creating economic opportunities. So this comes out of the feedback we received from the working group. We can work with that language to change, if this is too strong, we can change it, but essentially the meaning is improving amenities in both parts of town. And this has less to do with, you know, creating a retail mix that attracts certain kind of businesses and establishments in the South. John made a good point that, you know, the market will determine that mix. But if you create the right amenities, the commerce may follow. So that's why we put this into the quality of life part of economic development. It has to do with creating proper amenities to attract both businesses and residents. And this, you know, this would be one way that that disparity could be alleviated, whatever we end up calling it when we craft this goal. The first objective is create a more vibrant, sustainable commercial. Create a more vibrant, sustainable commercial corridors that will foster economic and social opportunities. So once again, you know, South Grafton, the commercial corridors, there's a sense that they're underutilized, that they're, you know, people from South Grafton have to drive up north to access some shopping amenities. So anything that we could do to enhance the opportunities there would be beneficial. This may include outreach and trying to promote those areas, outreach to developers, creating a dialogue with property owners, and looking at specifically, and this goes for both North and South Grafton, doing an assessment of the parcels that are commercial parcels that are available to see what development potential there is. And if there is already an effort underway, please let me know. You know, we want to highlight it and build on it. So if this is not novel in any way and there's something underway, we do want to mention it here. If there's any inventory of existing parcels.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything underway, but it does occur to me that particularly under this goal, but it also relates a little bit to some previous goals that we talk a lot in the housing context about mixed use, and mixed use has a commercial component. That's why we call it mixed use. And part of looking specifically at North and South Grafton, but more generally at the town as a whole, when we look at mixed use from a housing perspective, we also need to think about it in the economic development perspective in terms of where we could apply those concepts, what we might do in zoning to facilitate it. And some of that comes out of the action item here, undertake an analysis, et cetera, that out of that may come some ideas for zoning improvements and other potential incentives for fostering mixed use, the commercial side of mixed use.
Thank you. And John just mentioned that there's a list of properties that are over 5 acres that was recently reviewed by the EDC. So there is an effort underway for this, sounds like.
John, will you just get Elena and Sarah all that information, any discussion, like meeting minutes and whatnot that occurred when those properties were reviewed?
Sure.
Thanks. That'll be helpful.
Thank you. And then the last objective here has to do with placemaking. That is to say, public realm improvement, enhancing the aesthetic qualities. So this is more of a spatial approach to economic development, physical improvements, and particularly around commercial areas, obviously, to draw foot traffic to both areas. So any efforts that could be done, any grants that could be leveraged for those kinds of improvements would be great. John mentioned the Mill Village Park and the efforts to provide free Wi-Fi in that area. So that also is a placemaking strategy that attracts people to public places. And if there are no other comments or questions, we can move on to housing in the interest of time, but just let me know if there are any questions.
Alina, I'll just make a quick comment. I'm not sure if you were asking earlier, but we should just talk about it very briefly that there was a TIP project that was recently done on Main Street, on 122A, where we completely redid the sidewalks on the road, which it looks fantastic. But, you know, yeah, I think that this is an important goal and an important objectives because South Grafton is environmental justice census tracts. There's land that's available there. The zoning allows for flexibility and development, but I think there's some unique challenges with South Grafton, which, you know, I think folks here are aware, you know, it's a little bit more geographically isolated. I think the likelihood that you're going to build and you're going to have, you know, dirty dirt, let's just call it, like, you know, a 21E assessment or something like that. You know, I think that's high just because of the manufacturing history of Farnhamsville, Fisherville, and Saundersville. So, you know, there's unique challenges in South Grafton, but there's also a lot of really great opportunities. So I just wanted you to be, and I want you to be aware of that TIP project because I just finished that. And then there's a couple of other things that we'll be pursuing through Complete Streets as well, which I will send to you.
Yeah, thanks for that point. Yeah, there are definitely opportunities to create a pipeline of projects that would attract funding because it's an environmental justice block in this area. Okay, we'll move on to housing. So thanks again for your input. It was enormously helpful in putting these together. We'll start with goal 1. We tried to again to incorporate your feedback and also feedback we received from the survey and the workshop. And one of the most important concerns is where to focus development. So goal 1, focus future housing development in village centers. Encourage and incentivize development of high-density multi-family dwellings in these particular locations. Strengthen subdivision requirements for preserving open space, whether that means smart growth strategies or cluster type of development strategies. This is obviously Grafton is already doing that, but continue on that path to preserve open space. Another objective, encourage and incentivize development of subdivision homes in compact neighborhoods. Same principle, preserving open space by the siting of the housing. Encouraging compact development. Any questions on goal 1?
This isn't really a question, but more of something to keep in mind as we, you know, I think this falls more into the area of the action items that I hadn't, you know, have some ideas on, but we still need to work. And the question is, well, where are these village centers and what are the opportunities for development in them? And the answer is probably not as obvious as you might think, because you know, some of what I would call currently the village centers in Grafton don't seem to have many opportunities for future housing development. for example, right around the town common. It's a historic district, which limits what we can do in that immediate area, but even around surrounding it, it's largely residential. So the question is, as it's a nice idea in the abstract, but we need to nail it down at some point. And that's part of what I think, we should try to get to as we continue to work on this, is some sense of, where these village centers actually are and what the opportunities actually are. So I think as we develop action items for this, we need to, sort of put some focus on understanding what this really means for Grafton, as opposed to an abstract idea. I can't nail it down now. I don't want to nail it down. I just want to put the bug in people's ears that we really need to think about, try to figure out what this really means for Grafton.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Fisherville and the Common will have will require different approaches, different, zoning approaches also. Let's say reducing dimensional requirements, if applicable, would be very different in the two villages. So yeah, thanks for that point.
And dealing with what's existing there now. I mean,
Yeah.
if you had a greenfield to work on it, you could do a lot, but you have to work around what's already there.
Thank you. And if there are no other questions, we'll move on to goal 2, which is something that came up during the visioning process as well. We said we would save this conversation for the goals. So to that end, goal 2 is expand the supply and diversity of housing. And diversity is getting at that mismatch between household composition and size and housing types. We're trying to create that diversity of housing to be able to serve smaller household types and different income levels as well. First objective is encourage and incentivize development of a wider variety of housing types, accessory dwelling units, 2-family homes, 3-family homes in residential zones. And again, this is a zoning question before anything else. Foster the development of town-owned property. I'm sorry, George, you had your hand up. I want to make sure we hear your question.
Yes, I just, with regards to 2-family homes and 3-family homes in residential zones, if we're talking mixed use, especially in South Grafton, you have 2-family homes, 3-family homes mixed in with businesses. So why are we limiting ourselves to residential zones? I guess is why, what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I would say, since I kind of I largely wrote this, submitted this as my idea, is that is one of several things to think about. I mean, there will continue to be some strictly residential zones in town, and I'm thinking here of loosening that up to allow more flexibility. Distinct from that, of course, there is the mixed use concept, which also should be featured fairly prominently. And there's a number of ideas that I would put in under this as action items. And I think maybe, stating this first objective in terms of residential zones may be a little bit narrower than it needs to be.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, so maybe we should specify that what we're trying to do is add more flexibility within the existing residential zones that are primarily single family.
Yeah, I mean, you could also probably describe it as adding more flexibility in general, across all zones.
Yeah.
Not that I would expect residential to be right next to a factory in an industrial zone, but short of an obvious mismatch like that, mixed use is all about a lot more flexibility and sort of inherently. And, so the broader concept is more housing type flexibility in everywhere where it could possibly make sense.
And I would just add to that, David, yes, in South Grafton, there is industrial right next to residential. You know, specifically right off Colette Street and Cross Street. We have an industrial building there. We have residential all around it.
Yep, that used to be very common back in the 19th century and into the early 20th century. The mill workers lived in housing practically right next door to the mills.
So the next objective is referring specifically to the town's growing senior population. And we have two approaches here, provide housing for the town's growing elderly population while making more houses available for younger families. This point comes from Lindsay, and it's getting at not housing specifically built for seniors, but the way we see this is having strategies to age in place, for example, or finding some resources for adding accessibility alterations to existing homes. So it's not necessarily senior specific housing, but strategies in general. And one of the action items that follows is encourage affordable housing units specifically for seniors. So, you know, a lot of this is matching some of the points made in the housing production plan. But again, facilities and aging in place. We may want to add here something about providing services. So supportive services would be part of the housing strategy for seniors. So this may be the place to add an action item for that, but we can certainly develop that during the housing chapter writing. And then Sarah, if you could scroll down a little bit. Thank you. Creating a fuel assistance program for seniors, so it's getting at some of those supportive services that I mentioned. So if there are no other questions, we can move on to the third goal. All right, increase the affordable housing stock. So Grafton is currently around 5%. You know, Grafton was on track to be at a higher percentage SHI about, I think, a year ago, but some of the development stalled. So Grafton is currently about, I think, 5.26%. So obviously this goal is referring to not just 40B, but increasing, so not just subsidized units, but increasing the affordable housing stock in general. The first objective is incentivize affordable housing and development. Leverage the local initiative program to collaborate with developers via comprehensive permits. So this is the so-called 40B. This is something that Grafton can do successfully given its location. So, you know, as you go further west, towns, you know, they can't really do friendly 40Bs because they can't garner enough development interest, but Grafton really is in a position to leverage friendly 40B process. Yes, Fiona, go ahead.
Yeah, Elena, I just wanted to underscore what you're saying. I mean, we just did this for a new, you know, and the new Winslow Point development, which is coming along really well. That's another great working relationship, an example of a good public, you know, private partnership and way to get affordable units on the SHI. You know, we just did 188 Providence, and I'm working with the developer right now. That's also going to be local action units. I think that we're going to see a lot more of this. It seems like, and folks on this call can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like before 40B was the typical mechanism to get units on the SHI, but I think Grafton's starting to diversify and pursue, units through special permit a lot more.
Yeah, we have currently just approved 2 friendly 40Bs, 2 LIPs, which were comprehensive permits under 40B. Fiona, you just mentioned a couple of projects that were, they're not 40Bs, they're local action units, which is often referred to as a sort of a subset of LIP. And we've got another LIP under consideration, additional. So yeah, we have been, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years, we've been doing quite a bit of this, and it's certainly, I think it's working out well so far. And the point of including it here is we want to continue leveraging those programs.
Yeah, and the expectation is as the market cycles change, those developments will happen. So it's wonderful that there is the groundwork is already done on those. And I'm thinking of Pine Street, obviously, but Grafton is not, yeah. It looks like the groundwork is already done for that. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, we hope to see that move forward. I mean, it is an ambitious project for sure, and the market's a little tough right now, but yeah, it is fully permitted, so that's always a good thing.
Yeah. So related to the points that you just made is encourage and incentivize the inclusion of affordable housing units and developments that do not rely on comprehensive permits. Other developments that finance that funding gap with other types of subsidies, that may not be under friendly 40B. That's what that action item is trying to address.
Yeah, and here, I mean, here we can look at, more incentives. That, financing is always difficult. It's always problematic for a developer to include affordable units, and there, I think we want to, continue to look at, potentially additional incentives to make more of that happen.
Yeah, and that could be density bonuses. We had a conversation for example, with the Shrewsbury town manager, I'm sorry, and they mentioned that density bonuses are the most effective incentives for developers, especially in a friendly 40B type of context. So it's not just about the funding gap, it's about zoning incentives as well, from what we hear.
I can acknowledge Colleen's comment really quickly. I think it's important.
Yeah.
Every housing production plan strategy has been incorporated some way into these goals. You can see the ones that say HPP after them are directly taken from them. So yes, it is cross-checked, and there's definitely no, there's differences, but there's nothing that kind of clashes with each other on the housing production plan and this.
Yeah, thanks for that point, Colleen. We're definitely trying to incorporate that, but also take a more high-level view, more global view on housing. So not as focused on just affordability, which is the primary concern of the housing production plan, but having a wider lens. But we're definitely trying to incorporate those. So part of the so incentives, but also linkage fees as a way to stimulate housing. I just wanted to mention that as a possible strategy to have more housing built. The next objective is establish town support systems for affordable housing. And this is a suggestion that came from the Affordable Housing Trust. And as you can see from the action items, they have to do with securing that permanently affordable housing in some way, and the centrality to allocating or securing land and housing for the Affordable Housing Trust. So the action item says allocate funding for the Affordable Housing Trust. And then the second action item is establish an ongoing rental assistance program for those facing an emergency. Obviously, these were central to rental assistance efforts during COVID, but we've seen the effectiveness of that. So if the town has the capacity to take something like that on, or to find funding and aid for it, that would be very beneficial. And then the next objective is trying to get at getting community buy-in. And we know there are lively conversations about where housing should be placed, where what type of housing is preferred, how large the development should be, what density is desirable. So continuing these conversations with the community, we think would be essential in order to get community buy-in. So again, both a dialogue with developers and housing providers, but also dialogue with the community to secure buy-in. And I think that's all we have for housing. Any other questions on housing before we move on to quality of life?
I'll pick at one word on this. We probably want to do this for Grafton and not Brookfield.
Thank you.
Evidence of cut and paste. But hey, if you've got some good words from another town and they work for Grafton, copy and paste. Just make sure you use the term Grafton.
Thank you for flagging that.
Not the first time I've seen something like that. But yeah, is everybody cool with the what we've got laid out here for goals and objectives for housing and economic development? As always, I'll just reiterate, this is all subject to change, but I think if we've got, I think we've got a reasonably solid set of goals and objectives here to work with.
Yeah, I would agree. This looks like a good list. It's comprehensive, hits all the major points. Good job.
All right. So I'll turn it over to Sarah for the quality of life goals.
All right, thank you. We touched upon this a little bit last meeting. I don't think we had time to get to the discussion of the key findings. But this was our fun chapter, supplemental. We got to pick what worked best for Grafton in terms of what we could really focus on that we might not usually get a chance to focus on in a master plan process. And it was very apparent through community engagement that two themes were communication between town residents and town of Grafton, and increasing volunteerism and taking a look at civic capacity. So those are the first two goals. The first goal we have here is advancing communication between the town of Grafton and Grafton residents. So this is looking at ways that the town could increase transparency, both in its online presence, but also experimenting with some ways to interact with the public that's not necessarily like somebody coming into town hall with an issue, something that happens before then that could tell residents how to interact with town hall the best way, how things get done, who to talk to in different circumstances. And then our second objective is strengthening messaging between boards, committees, departments, and residential groups as something else that came out during community engagement. So again, we think we'll talk about this next month since we didn't have a chance to look at it too in depth last month. But this is what we're starting, just to give you a sense of what quality of life is looking like. And the strengthening messaging objective also has some action items based on new residents, based on welcoming people to town, creating how-to sheets for town departments, promoting town events, looking at different communication methods. Any questions on goal 1? Great. Goal 2 is increasing volunteerism and civic capacity. So the first objective is based on volunteerism, looking at possible barriers for people in Grafton that are interested in volunteering, but either don't have the time, the resources, or a way into getting into boards, committees, even nonprofits, ways to advertise, and ways to have residents understand what the lift is and what it means to be on a board. And then also hosting town-owned hosted events as a way to partner with other groups in town, also to kind of strengthen the understanding of who works for the town for residents of Grafton, and also just a great way to increase quality of life. And then the third goal here is based on poverty, food insecurity, and housing insecurity from kind of a holistic looking at symptoms of poverty, food insecurity, and housing insecurity, and how we could use the Grafton community to become even better supports for people who are facing all or any one of those three. So the first objective is strengthening the food network, which we heard a lot about at the business meeting, of something that's really sparking up in Grafton, of a kind of grassroots food insecurity movement to make sure everybody in Grafton is fed. So we want to keep that momentum going for sure. Second objective is looking at affordable housing. So this will definitely speak to the housing chapter, but we're looking at more of the partnerships aspect of it, and how can we create a comprehensive lowercase affordable housing support system. And the third objective is, and that's trickles down a little bit with the action items here, preparing for potential of refugee and immigrant populations. So all three of these objectives under the third goal is looking at how we could strengthen partnerships, community organizations, and private and public partnerships for times of crisis for Grafton residents. So we had a lot of different directions we could go with this chapter. So I'm curious to hear either over email or next month, since it looks like we're almost out of time, if you think this speaks to what Grafton is looking for in the quality of life chapter, if there's things that are missing that we think won't be covered in other chapters, I think this is a really interesting one to see where we could go with it. Any questions for now? Yeah, Mike.
Hello, everyone. So I brought up the civic, the opportunity for civic education, just for things that I'm looking for and better understanding how my town works. I've been here since 2006, but you can say it's like I'm a new resident with my move to a different home, and just there's so many different documents we have, and not knowing necessarily what our org chart is like, but just finding ways that we can make it easy for people to understand the flow of how we work, and then also understanding things like how Massachusetts state law, general law ties to our bylaws, ties to our charter. Those last two pieces, I recently found they exist, but I don't know how they kind of relate to each other necessarily. So things like that can help people to be better citizens in ways that they can support as well as make change.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. So glad you're here tonight. Anything else on quality of life? Oh, sorry, Dave.
Yeah, so our marching orders with respect to this are to review this and give you guys the feedback on what we think, what we'd like to see added or changed. you know, any thoughts we have on the goals and objectives for quality of life?
Absolutely.
And we'll dig into this in more detail next month.
And we'll also send some materials for the next topics we're going to cover in the next session in April. So look out for those materials by email.
Yeah, I'll be sending email reminders to everybody and, you know, updates and whatnot as well. So don't worry.
All right, so I think we've, at this point, have covered most of our agenda. You know, we've spent a lot of time on housing economic development. We got an introduction to quality of life. We can expect more material on the additional chapters. The ones I had listed on the agenda here are town services and transportation and whatever else, you know, Sarah and company have ready for us to discuss in April. We had a discussion item here from Mike Rooney on citizen education. We covered at least a bit of that just a few minutes ago. But you know, Fiona and Mike, what more should we cover on that topic? I know we touched on it at our last meeting, and we were left wondering what exactly you know, we had in mind. What exactly citizen education means for us here, and considering that the topic is subject to a wide variety of interpretations.
Yeah, Dave, so I think, you know, you hit the nail on the head. You know, Mike and I had chatted at the workshop back in October, and then we discussed again at the business owners meeting. And I know that Mike's also been in contact with Sarah. And, you know, he explained what he's looking to do. But I think, Mike, you know, I think it would be helpful for us. So obviously we're not going to drill down into it and significantly this evening, but is it more of like an overarching theme that we're weaving into each of the chapters of the master plan? Or, I mean, I think that the quality of life section actually did a really good job of incorporating some of the key points, but I don't know if you had wanted to talk about a little bit further about what, you know, what you're thinking, and, you know, if you've talked to anyone else or whatever, or whatnot.
It really is just a gap of how if you look at it as an organization, how the organization functions, and the things that guide it, things like citizen petitions. And I know we have the website, but I'm more one person. I represent a few people, and I don't know where it fits into the plan. It feels like the quality of life may be a good place for it, but I can see the thoughts of more of an online education, leveraging tools we have, like the YouTube channel, in order to break down things like today. I spent the time and read both our bylaws as well as our charter. It's not in plain English to me, right? So being able to have that where you can break it down so it's actionable and understandable to the people that we want to serve, and we want them to be able to volunteer by understanding what's happening and how they can work within the system. So
yeah, so right. So it sounds like you're thinking in sort of broadly in terms of making it a lot easier for the residents of Grafton to understand how the town works. You know, what is the town in terms of the town government, and what is town government, what is not town government, just how things work here in Grafton. And if you have a question, you know, who do you ask and where do you go for the answer? Please don't get me started on discussing the town website. I could go on all night about that.
There's a hand up.
Colleen, you have your hand up.
So for a couple of years now, the select board's been hosting the Ask Me Anythings, which is designed to do just that, for residents to come ask anything and learn how to do anything and have it be in plain English. So, and I think that the town is working towards doing that, but it's a very underutilized tool. People just don't attend it, and it's too bad.
Thank you for that. So the way I tend to think about things is meeting people where they are, and if something happens once, twice, or you know, whenever it happens, it's not necessarily when I need it or when I want it. So I'm planning on going to that to ask me anything, but it's not going to be recorded. And it's not in a way where I like to say Control F, where I can search for what I need. And it's just really easy and intuitive to guide people through. If you think about almost through the lens of learning and development, we have to kind of, I hesitate to use the word educate, but I will, or provide the resources for our citizens in order to be fully active. Because some discussions I'm having, I can see where people are stuck and they don't know how to make change, or they don't necessarily understand the language and how it ties back to other pieces. Because when you're reading the different documents, it pulls you in different places. So things that I would propose is even going and linking, because if it says it links to a part of the bylaw, then link to it. So you can go and you can get a full appreciation for what you're looking for. I don't know what role I'll play in this, but
I mean, that kind of lines up with some of what I would like to see the town do on its website, because I think that you said meet people where they are. To the extent that we can provide folks with the information and resources they need in a way that's convenient for them, and the website is that, it could be that for a lot of people, for a lot of information. The way we currently have organized that website, let me say it leaves a little bit to be desired. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. It's improved over the years, but some of us, I've been involved in discussions with a few people who have similar interest, and we see so much more that we could be doing on that website. And so that's going to be a part of ultimately whatever can be made to work. But it's not going to be real easy. It takes work, and we don't have the resources. The town doesn't have the resources that it needs to really make it work well for everybody. But it's a definite need.
It may be the volunteer. Excuse me for talking over you. It may be the volunteer opportunity that someone is waiting for. It may be the thing that fits with someone in our town. It may be something that they do for work, and it allows them to kind of give back by using a skill that they have. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge, because since 2006 to about 2020, parts of 23, I lived here, but I wasn't of here. Right? I was pretty much heads down until something happened, and that ignited me to go, hey, what's going on here? How does this work? And that if we can get ahead of that, I would love to.
Yeah, most of the people who live in Grafton, they live here, they pay their rent or their mortgage, their taxes, they go shopping. As long as the streets are plowed, they're okay. Anyway, yeah, there's and I think it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about, Mike, does sort of tie into some of those goals and objectives we saw under quality of life. But I think it doesn't hurt to put some emphasis on that.
Yeah. Seeing that someone who's in charge of communications can kind of focus on that. So yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, and thank you for your input, Mike. Anybody have any other questions for Mike?
No, just thanks, Mike, for coming. Appreciate you coming to address the group. And obviously, this is a public meeting, so don't feel like, you can't come back again and chat with us more. So I hope you do. And yeah, I mean, I think that the message here, transparency, communication, like that's definitely overarching themes that we can bring to the plan in its entirety. So thank you.
Excellent. All right. Be well, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right. Remaining on our agenda, then there's an agenda item for public input. What we just had from Mike, I think, qualifies as public input. As I don't see any other members of the public attending the meeting. Almost at the end. Fiona, you had an item on the agenda for coordination for April meeting.
Yeah, I'm just working on that kind of offline, but just so everybody's aware, I'm not going to be here for the April meeting. So just wanted to give everybody a heads up that, Dave and CMRPC and Colleen will help me for that one. And I'll try and get everything in advance as early as I can. I think we have, as Elena and Sarah mapped, relayed to us, we have a good game plan mapped out here. So should be pretty seamless, but I'm going to try and get those emails out, have everyone send me their feedback on quality of life, that type of thing, sooner, hopefully, rather than later. And then that'll give Elena and Sarah enough time to kind of review and set up the meeting materials. And my office manager will be in and will be helping with the more administrative side of things, but I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. And that's it.
All righty. Are there any other items which may lawfully come before the working group? Unless there's anything else, I think a motion to adjourn might be in order.
Second.
Did somebody make the motion?
I thought you did. So
No,
moved.
the chair doesn't make motions. The chair would recognize a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded that this meeting be adjourned. Motion to adjourn is not debatable, so I'll just take a roll call vote. Mr. Allen,
Approve.
Ms. Capizzello,
Aye.
Mr. Carroll,
Aye.
Ms. Duckworth,
Aye.
Ms. Fox,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Ms. Grace,
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Hool.
Aye.
I think Mr. Petrie has left us. Mr. Petrie? Mr. Robbins votes aye. Ms. Robbins?
Aye.
Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Utangi? Roshan?
Yeah, aye.
All righty, motion carried unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you all.